Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to review Hellenistic Religions, an Introduction by Luther H. Martin. I really like the pattern on the cover of this particular book. It looks vaguely, like mosaics you find in the ruins of Greek structures. I thought that was kind of a nice touch. This is actually a gift from my friends Skal and Kara, and I'm very glad they sent it to me because it was very informative and quite interesting. Now, when I was in high school, they offered a mythology class, and I knew the teacher in the class. He was the guidance counselor for the school literary magazine, and I was one of the members and eventually one of the editors. And I asked him before I took his class, I said, do you cover more than, the classic Greek mythology? Because my interests were beyond just the classic Greek gods. I had an interest in Eastern and African and Asian and Native American and Northern European religious structures as well. So at that time, I was an atheist, but I was still vastly interested in all these topics. And he said yes, he did cover more than that. And I guess I can't call him a liar because he did actually cover something other than the Greek mythology. About 10% of his class was something other than Greek mythology, and part of that was Roman. So there was a very small percentage that wasn't Greek mythology. So because he had said this, and I thought it was a bit of a bait and switch, when we had to do some kind of a writing project, I made sure I picked a particular pantheon from a culture that he knew nothing about. He gave me very good grades on those because his ego would not let him admit that he knew nothing about these religions. Yes, when I was in high school, I was a bit of a dick. However, the one thing that his class lacked was context. For example, in a lot of ways, it was like learning about the presidents of the United States of America, these very important figures, without learning any American history to go along with it. He didn't set the gods that he discussed into anything. He discussed the gods and how they related to each other. He discussed the mythology around, the myths around those particular gods, which was cool and all. And that did have some bearing on the people that worship those gods. But he didn't ground that course in the culture that had evolved with those myths, or those myths that evolved with the culture, depends how you want to look at it. And so it was very disconnected. And while I did well in that class, I didn't bring away from it a deep and abiding love of Greek mythology, not any greater than I had when I entered. So it was a decent class, and I don't regret taking it. But I didn't bring away anything which I thought that I should have. This book, however, Hellenistic Religions, really would have been a great companion to that course. If he had taken part of that course and devoted it to this book, or even just excerpts from this book, the course would have had much greater depth, and it would have been a better understanding, created a better understanding of what Greek mythology was to the people that practiced it. So this book covers the people and how they used the religion of the Greek mythology, as well as the story of the gods. And one of the themes it uses throughout the book is the story of the golden ass, which is a man that through ego and happenstance and such gets himself turned into an ass. And then the events that he goes through while in the form of an ass to eventually get himself turned back into a human. And the fact that by doing this kind of road trip style of storytelling, the author was able to hit not only different cultural aspects of Greek culture, but the different ways that religion worked into it and the different modes of religious belief that were in practice. I've never read it, and actually this has made me have a good interest, and maybe I want to actually find myself a good translation at some point in the future. This book by using that mechanism and touching upon this theme, and the author returns to it periodically, kind of he'll go off on a little tangent and he brings it back to that. And he goes off on a little tangent and he brings back that he wove that in there very successfully. And it by having that theme go through the book, it focused it, I thought, very well. And I think the author did an excellent job of not only bringing information to the viewer, but telling the story in the process, which is also useful. I enjoyed the book as a read, not just as information. So that's good. If you can make someone enjoy a read, particularly in a nonfiction book, you're going to get more of that information to stick inside their head, because the reader is going to be able to make better connections to it. He also was able to give the context of how did this fit in with the religions around Greece, in Egypt, and the Near East, Judaism, early Christianity. Because the mythology course I had taken in high school very much said, it was almost like, in some ways, it was almost like a gaming book. Okay, this is the time period when Greek mythology took place, and then this time period ended, and then Roman mythology took over, and then this time ended, and then Christian mythology took over. And that's not how it was. It wasn't like that. It was more like this. There was a whole lot of overlap between Judaism and the Greek mythologies and Roman beliefs and Christianity. These were all going on at the same time over a time span. The influences would fade and pop up, and they would affect each other. They were not all in isolation. And my high school mythology class said nothing about that. Zero. Nil. Nada. Nothing. This book helped really bring that to the fore, that all of these different religious elements were going on in the world, and how the Greeks would absorb other religions so successfully. Now we did touch on that in the high school course, but not to a great degree. It was very, very, very lightly how, this god was, influences from this culture here, but very, again, not very deep. It's a very shallow course. And this book is a very deep topic, and it covers a lot of different things. One of the things I liked from a personal perspective, at the end of each chapter, they list the bibliography and all the references for the information in that chapter. So I don't have to go to the back of the book. It's all right there at the end of the chapter, and I really wish more nonfiction books would do that. Because when I'm thinking about that chapter, that's when I want you to hand me that information. Not at the end of the book, when I will now not have a way to really relate it in my head. Oh, okay, these are notes for chapter 2. Do I remember the details enough in chapter 2 to know if I really want these references? Much better layout. I prefer this. And the list of references and bibliography and such are extensive. Well worth your time to look at. And I plan on keeping this book, not just because it was a gift from my friend Scott and Cara, but I would keep this book regardless because of those references. They are going to be useful to me in the future if I want to look up more information on these topics. So, I heartily recommend Hellenistic Religions, an Introduction by Luther H. Martin. It was an enjoyable read. It was very informative. I thought it was well laid out. I thought it was well presented. I thought the author was able to make the read interesting, which all helps you to absorb the information contained therein. Well, I guess it's time to go. And I guess it's time to go for me as well. So, if you're interested in Greek mythology and Greek religious practices and the context that they had at that time to the people who used them, this is the book to read.